Yeah. Yet another lesson learned, Carrie. Don't go to meetings in your pajamas.
That's hilarious.
Oh, we have Caitlin from Australia that's logged in. Good morning or good afternoon. It's almost midnight. Well, you are a trooper.
Good morning, everyone, as you're joining in. Thank you for coming at on time. We will just give a couple of minutes. Being the first call of Virtual Sprint School, we're just going to give people a little bit of time to get in and get used to the Zoom meeting. If you can hear us, let us know in the text box. Or if you're having any kind of technical problems, let us know. Welcome, George. Yeah, let us know in the text box. We say hi. It's okay. This is a safe space. This is totally what happens in this webinar will stay in this webinar.
And it'll go on the video and then go on YouTube.
Okay, correct. Forgot about that part.
As with most things, Ali. If it happens and is recorded, the chances are it ends up on YouTube.
Yeah. We'll just, for those joining in, just giving a couple more minutes. We have 30 people so far on the call. We'll give one more minute and then we'll jump in. Does that sound good, Josh?
Yes, sounds fantastic, Ali.
Yes. Because we have 1 hour and we want to going to be quite a busy 1 hour, and we want to make sure that we get through all of the stuff we have to get done.
Okay, I'm back. I had a wardrobe change.
Thanks, Zayna. Welcome, Kareem from Toronto. How's the weather there in Toronto, Kareem?
Hi, all. Sorry, I was on mute, and I'm with a colleague, Yinka, in the office as well. So we're using one mic, and hers was on mute, so I blame her. But I did answer you to say how bad the weather is here and how it reminds you of being back in London.
Okay. We got people from London here, so they might take offense too. I don't know.
I mean, that's my original home, so I'm not being offensive.
Okay, all right. All right, Josh, let's do this.
Sure. So good morning, everybody. Welcome to the first ever inaugural virtual sprint school. I want to thank you guys so much for taking a part with us. You guys are part of, I'm going to toot our own horn here in the history of the making for virtual sprint school. This is our inaugural one. This is our beta test. And we are so happy that everyone could join us from around the world. We're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to learn a lot of stuff, and it's going to feel really, really quick. So we want to welcome you guys to the other side, or the first step into this world, or the first step into our tribe. So everybody who's here, we all consider you now immediately part of our team, and we're going to reach out to you and ask for your help all the time. No, I'm just kidding. But we're always going to be there for you guys. So make sure you follow us on Twitter. Make sure you tweet lots of stuff from the school, like how awesome it is, and use that hashtag that we've got on the bottom of every slide. It says hashtag Sprint School. So we are going to be using a lot of social media. So I really hope that you guys have all got your thumbs warmed up so you're ready to start typing. And we want to see lots of tweets. Maybe you hear something from the course that really interests you, or something that intrigues you, or maybe you have a question for us, or you ask, like, Josh, where'd you get that bow tie? Just hit me up on Twitter or at D4 or Design for AHS, and I will let you know my secrets. I'll just have to DM you that, though, because I don't want everybody to know. And as well as we go throughout the presentation, make sure you guys, make connections in the chat box. Ask us questions in the chat box. We have Shaylin, who's from our team as well, who's going to be monitoring that, keeping an eye, and making sure that we answer every question that you guys have. So we are here for you guys, and we're really excited to do this with you guys. But we have one question for you before we get started. We want to know, what are you guys curious about? what intrigues you? What made you sign up for this school that starts at this ungodly hour for some people who are in Australia at midnight, or for the people who are in the room that may be from BC, it's 7 in the morning for them. Trust me, it's worth it that you showed up early because our speaker is going to be fantastic. I want to know why, what are you curious about? Why'd you sign up? What's something you really want to learn? Throw it in the chat box or unmute your mic. So you may notice there's a large group of people here and I'm allowing you to unmute your mic, but I can take it away. I'm just kidding. I want to know though, what do you guys are interested about? Julie unmuted your mic already, so I'm curious. What are you curious about?
I am curious about how you'll bring together all these people from many different parts of the world here today and run this virtually. I'm really excited to learn about that.
Oh, fantastic. We have some stuff showing up in the chat box. How do we deal with multiple stakeholders, including unions and service providers? That's a good question.
Damn, first thing in the morning, but this is good.
It's too early for that one. Some people who are curious about the facilitation. Some people, it looks like they've experienced the sprint school that we did in Edinburgh. So they want to learn a bit of the skills too, which is fantastic. We're excited to share this stuff with you. Ideas to fruition in an innovative way. I like this one. This is going to be our last one. I think there's a better way to build efficient teams and effective solutions, especially in healthcare, and always want to learn new approaches. Boom, mic drop. He knows what's going on. That's what we're going to be talking about today, and we're super excited to share that with you guys. So we're going to go over some objections. No, I'm kidding. We want to know, where are you guys from? So a lot of you have already started this. In the chat box, just say your first name and where you're from. And if there's multiple people in your room, I know a couple people have already said that, let us know.
Yeah, it's like those back in the day, I don't know if you guys remember those chat boxes ASL used to happen. So just do, don't worry with the S, just start the where you name and location.
Name and location. You're just missing the S. We got Grand Prairie, Scotland. Always wanted to go there. I'm actually Scottish. The last name's McCutcheon. If you, I think it makes it pretty obvious.
You have a cousin there, Josh?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I've been told my clan has a castle. I'm not too sure what that means.
A Lego castle. Okay.
Lego castle.
All right, we got a lot of people from Alberta here too.
Awesome.
And Toronto.
Nobody from BC yet. Good. So I don't have to apologize to them just yet. Perfect.
Okay.
So the design lab is based in Calgary, Alberta, and there's a lot of people from Canada, which is fantastic. But we are in a large city, the largest city, I believe, in Alberta, and we work in Alberta Health Services. So there, we are a small but really mighty team. There are 5 of us, not 4, but Marlise is our fearless leader. Ali, Aaron, and myself, Josh, we are all design consultants with the design lab. And we do a lot of stuff. One of the things that we like to do is education, as you guys are all about to experience today. Whether that's virtual education or in person, we teach sprints and we also teach scrums. We do service redesign, co-creation. We also do mobilizing, social movements, hashtag breaking the rules for better care and health. And we do this all with human-centered design and design thinking at the heart of our team. We work with multiple organizations within the province. We don't just touch on Alberta Health Services. We work with Alberta Health, which is our government organization, the universities, both Calgary and the University of Alberta, and we work with other outside associations like the AMA or the Alberta Medical Association. And before we start every single day, we're going to be talking about our session objectives or the things we want to learn. So we're going to be doing an overview of the virtual sprint school. We're going to be talking about the healthcare sprint, and as well as a little bit of the sprint history, or the history of how we have developed the sprints to take it from something that Jake Knapp and Google Ventures have done and move it into a healthcare context.
And just so you guys know, we will be recording this session, and we will be providing guys slides, uploading them on SlideShare and sending you probably by tomorrow. So don't worry, all these slides, including our guest speaker slides, will be there. So don't have to worry about that.
So we have a fantastic 6-week course prepped for you guys, where we're going to be doing a combination of not just learning from us. You guys are going to be learning from design experts from throughout the globe. You're also going to be doing some activities and stuff. So I hope you guys have got the email with our workbook. A quick shout out to Erin on our team. She's fantastic and built this workbook that we can go through, so that you're not just kind of sitting there watching Ali and myself speak, because that would be really boring. And we want you guys to experience a bit of sprints and healthcare sprints and what it's actually like. Ali?
All right. Okay, well, I'm gonna take the honors now and welcome our guest speaker, Zayna. Those of you guys don't know Zayna is what we call a true disruptor. She is an amazing person who works right now as a future strategist. I don't know what that means, but she can tell you that. But she works in future strategist in St. Elizabeth's Healthcare, and she is really about changing the way we do healthcare. And that's all I'm gonna say, and I'm gonna just give it over to Zayna to share her slides and get this party rocking.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Let me just share here. Ali, can you give me sharing rights?
Yep, 1 second, I'm on it. There you go. You should be able to share now.
All right. Good morning, afternoon, evening. I'm going to kind of get right to it because I think you guys want to get to your content. So Marlies and the team asked me to just set a little bit of the stage. I've never done a 10-minute version of this. It's usually a 3-day version of what I'm about to do. So you've stretched me, girl. But really, it's just to give you a taste of why do these two words of design and innovation have to fit together, and they do, and they're vital. And it's really just a taste, but I think it'll be enough to get you the minimum you need to get through what's coming. If you guys can't hear me at some point, just flag because I can't see the chat, okay? I am on Twitter. Future strategist is a fancy word for chief innovation officer. I don't like the word innovation, to be honest, because I think in healthcare that diminishes us to basically digitizing a bunch of analog processes. And I think we need to push way bigger than that. And so I try not to use the word to describe my work. All right, so we all know health is going through massive changes. This is at least how I frame it, to try to get our head around all the shifts that are happening, from reactive sick care to predictive, from one size fits all to highly precise, from a big focus on institutions as the only channel for getting services to this kind of omni-channel, decentralized, and what I call a digital experience, this kind of seamless physical and digital interplay, or I've just heard a new one, phygital, P-H-Y-G-I-T-A-L. That one hurts. But anyway, a big shift from episodic and intermittent to continuous care, massive power shift, which I think is underpinning why design has come to the top of the forefront, from the healthcare provider to what I call people-powered healthcare. And then finally, business model shift from a focus on volume and costs and inputs to, focusing on the result. And we haven't done business model innovation in healthcare really ever in 150 years. So that's a big one. So, that's a lot of change. And then, when you layer on that, there's now this software layer underpinning all of medicine, and medicine has been analog for over 150 years. We've evolved linearly. And that's all changing now that we're becoming an information-oriented paradigm. A statement like this will always be true, and this has never been true in healthcare before. And so we've kind of designed our systems of care for over 100 years to actually stifle change, to stay the course and change very, very slowly for all the right reasons, perhaps, but it's just not going to cut it, kind of given the volume, the magnitude of what's coming, and it's kind of out of the healthcare system's hands because there's a consumer kind of undercurrent that's pulling us there. And so it's no wonder when companies like Accenture or IBM has done this as well, when they map kind of global core sectors that drive our economy and drive society, on the horizontal axis is, how susceptible are these core sectors to disruption? And disruption means whoever used to do something and get paid isn't doing that anymore, and now someone else is. That's all disruption is. So how susceptible on the X against how much disruption to the incumbents, the traditional players, has already happened? Of course, it's no wonder, media and software are in the top left, but look who shows up in the bottom right corner, right? Our sector, and this is why there's just this explosion of interest in building a skill set and a mindset for innovation, because you cannot quality improve your way out of the bottom right corner. This is about rebasing and rebuilding. And if the incumbents don't figure out how to do this, they will be disrupted. And that's why, they're all kind of building capacity to how do we meet patients and families where their new needs and expectations are under a massively constrained resource model. That's innovation. So given that, if I had to summarize the heart of what's going on is, you get disrupted when the life cycle of your business model, which is what do you do, what do other people do, and how do you make that sustainable with a revenue model? When that life cycle no longer can keep up with your organization's life cycle, which is you want your organization to still be around, whether it's a health system or a hospital or government or, Apple or whatever. So in other industries where business model didn't outlast life cycle of the org, then they either got disrupted or they evolved, right? I always look at Philips. This company used to make light bulbs. Then they got into, MRI machines and imaging and toothbrushes. Now they're a complete consumer digital health company. But in healthcare, our organizations have had the same business model for 150 years. And it is not an easy skill set to just change your business model overnight, but that's the pressure. And, we need to remember, what is a business model? I love this definition from the Business Innovation Factory, which is an incredible human-centered design lab to solve messy problems in healthcare and education. A business model is a story, right? It's your story of how your org creates value, delivers value, and actually then captures that value. Because if you don't capture value, you've just designed something really interesting on paper. And we're going to come back to that. And so, of course, I collect headlines about, the death of the healthcare system, the end of hospitals. The World Economic Forum was like, goodbye hospital, hello homespital. When I was working in the Netherlands, we were working on the phone spital. So these things get said, and I don't think hospitals will go away, but no hospital will be anything like it's been for the last 150 years. And so that's kind of this, how do we get through that and evolve our organizations so that we still have a relevant business model? I collect these, ways that all these emerging companies, largely startups, that are bringing a new value proposition to healthcare. They like to borrow from other industries that have already been disrupted with business models, the Slack for healthcare, Instagram for doctors, et cetera, et cetera. I have about 100 of these now. The Uber for healthcare is actually dead because Uber actually has a company now called Uber Health, and they're fully disrupting, ambulance services and medical transport with their own service model. So there's kind of this burgeoning, shift. Either new entrants are coming up with new business models that are sticking, or incumbents are trying to defy what all the theory says, which is it's really, really hard to evolve your business model from an existing business model, but we're trying to do it. And that's what I do. I'm a business model innovator in a 110-year-old organization, that often behaves like it's 110 years old. And so my team is kind of just like Marlie's in the Design for AHS lab. We're trying to build that capacity. So kind of put that all together, all this change is not, is innovation. this word innovation, the reason I don't use it is a lot of people think about that thinking innovatively means you're doing innovation. That thinking creatively means you're doing innovation. And that's absolutely not true. And so, one way to kind of talk about innovation, I borrowed this from Kaiser Permanente, and this is a big health system in the US that we work quite closely with. They talk about, whatever was the current state, the status quo of anything, innovation is that first big leap to the worst, best place, right? So, yellow is the Nokia phone, pink is the first iPhone 1, and all of us would look back at the 1 and be like, what the hell were we thinking? And then quality improvement just gets you to iPhone 10 kind of thing. And you can't use the same tools for improvement, which is the blue, as innovation. Because improvement implies that what you're doing is generally right, it just could be better. Innovation challenges whether you should be doing the thing at all in the first place. So that's kind of one way to think about the definition. The other is a bit more academic. This is used a lot in, academic medical centers and circles around distinguishing, this ladder of you're in kind of innovation territory when you're kind of doing things that maybe you're borrowing from another sector that, nobody's doing, or that people immediately tell you it can't be done. Like when I get told that can't be done, I'm like, I'm going in, because that means I'm working on something that's innovation. Everything in blue is in theory improvement. I would argue in healthcare, kind of the first bullet point under number 5 is also innovation. Okay, so
Zayna, just give your 2-minute warning on this.
2 minutes, yeah. So back to our kind of business model definition, right? So if you think about, I like this definition of innovation because it links all the concepts and brings them to design. You're in the sweet spot if what you're developing is desirable by humans, is viable, it has a business model that sticks, and it's feasible. You can actually implement. And so that's kind of where all these different definitions of business model map. And so kind of double clicking on this desirability piece, people who do business strategy consulting, which is what I do, they come in on the viability, like what's the business plan, what's the business case. People who do startups and tech, they come in, they think technology is going to be the answer and leading the Trojan horse. But human-centered design enters through desirability. It enters through the end user, and it threads through all of them. It's not the only entry point, but you're bringing the user to the forefront of every piece of innovation. And that's my methodology in my org, and we shamelessly stole it from IDEO. And so when you think of where would you apply this, you don't always need to do it. I reflect on the topology of problems in healthcare. When you don't know the answer very well and nobody agrees, there's lots of stakeholders, you're kind of in the complex zone. That's where human-centered design comes in, and every health innovation by default is complex for many reasons, whereas complicated problems, on the bottom right, are more what management consultants would solve, or business strategy, right? You can't use the same tool set because healthcare is complex. This is the mapping of all the assets around a diabetes patient, right? You can't do, strategic planning in a boardroom to solve that. And another way to think of the difference between human-centered design versus top-down linear, get the data, get the answer, analyze, and present the result, is like we prototype the answer right away, see what's working, go back down, fix it, go up, go down, go down, go up. It's extremely iterative, and that's what you'll work through in your design sprint. This is not a comfortable methodology for particularly healthcare people who love all the data, all the answers, and they want a perfect answer, right? And that's kind of what we're trying to untangle. And so I heard the word creativity in the questions. Design, does have some creativity, but I would suggest it's much more a mindset and a very good methodology. And the sprint is one of the methodologies that is core to the toolkit. I'm just going to skip these. Lots of people talk about the methodology. This is the one we used when I was working in the Netherlands. It's all based on the IDEO. You get empathy, you kind of find their answer, test, etc. A big part of getting better methodology is observing a lot, even better if you engage. And the best, if to really design for, like, let's say a pregnant woman, would be to experience what patients and families go through. And these are all methods built into the toolkit, prototyping, But the last thing I'll say, which we need to remember, which will reflect what you do today, and then I'll wrap up, is sure, we say there's this linear process of design, but the reality is you're actually doing a little bit of everything all the time in real time and iterating. And that's the challenge of this methodology and why you need to be trained. And I commend you for being part of this training. Thank you very much.
That was a mic drop moment for me right there. I'm trying to absorb this.
Drop them.
Whew.
Can we just listen to you for the rest of the time?
Yeah, I know, but like,
we got
Josh,
35 more minutes. No, that was absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that with all of us. I can imagine there's a lot of people in the room right now who may have questions for Zayna. So if anyone in the room want to ask her something, you can type something in the chat box. Let us know if you think. Oh, we have the first one. So design thinking gets you to innovation was the first question.
Design thinking is a methodology to do innovation. And I would submit in healthcare, it is the methodology. Because you start with the person who's going to be impacted by whatever you're doing and you design around that.
Awesome. We had another question in regards to how should QI react to design thinking?
So there's a lot. I have a lecture I give on the similarities and the differences. A lot of the tools overlap. But I think the biggest difference is what's the intention at the outset, right? Again, if what you're doing generally works, but you know from published literature, it could be 30% better, like antibiotic prescribing rates or whatever, mortality and whatever. You QI yourself to fix that, and there's a great methodology. But maybe you shouldn't even be prescribing antibiotics in the first place. Now you're in innovation. Right? So it's just your intention and your orientation, and therefore the complexity of who you need to be involved are very, very different, and your methodologies are a little bit different, although there's some overlap. There's lots of literature that answers that question, by the way.
Zayna, there was a really good question by George.
Yeah.
He's saying, how can you build momentum with small innovation wins to establish the credibility necessary to make larger change?
Okay, so again, what is innovation? So any of you who are part of an innovation team, if you haven't already, clearly define for your organization and the mandate of your group, what are you defining as innovation? Once you've done that, then what you asked, George, is perfectly fine. So for example, in my organization, we take a portfolio approach. So we have to have little I innovation. It's very small. It's like 10% of what we do. But if we aren't greasing the wheels and doing little I innovation, which in my case is things like virtual healthcare, that's little I innovation. It's hard, but it's not fundamentally changing a business model. Those get you the muscle, the buy-in, the practice to do big I innovation, which, like, for example, in my org, we're designing a completely new model of seniors housing. Right? That this doesn't even exist in the market today. But we think if we do that, we're going to actually make people healthier much more than, we do 20,000 home visits a day. I can optimize the hell out of that, but to what end, So I have a portfolio, define it, and then you need to have the whole portfolio. Plus your team will be exhausted if they're only doing big I innovation because they won't get results very quickly. So you do need the small wins.
We'll take one more question.
There's a sustainability question here from Christine. You want me to do that one?
Sure.
Yeah, do it.
Okay, so this word sustainability, so I have about 6 banned words. I don't like the word sustainability. I don't like innovation. I don't like patient-centered, and I hate the word digital health. But that's just me. But I think sustainability, we just use it too much because it's been such an obsession in publicly funded healthcare to be around affordability and cost containment and cost pressures. When you're doing innovation, at the end of the day, you need a business model, and all a business model is you have a way of bringing in some kind of revenue to pay for doing the work. If at the end of that, you don't intend to have a surplus, which means you're a nonprofit, which is what we are, I'm a nonprofit social enterprise, you still need a sustainable business model. And that is heart to this methodology with desirability, feasibility, and viability. Viability is a fancier word for sustainability. That's all it is. is, do you have a revenue stream that covers your costs? And if you need to make profit to pay the investors who helped you do what you do, you need to have a revenue stream to cover that. So it is
Zayna,
central and it's built in.
If I understand that, so if your little improvements and little I innovations or big I innovations eventually become part of your business model, then you've made it a sustainable, moved into sustainability. Is that what you mean?
100%. And what we're seeing a lot more, like we do a bunch of, you go to hackathons and all these ideation challenges. More and more they're saying, if you come to me and say what's going to fund my brilliant innovation is a grant, they're going to shut you down, right? Or the foundation of your health org, because that's not sustainable. That might give you seed capital, or in the business world we say risk capital, but you need a way to get sustainable revenue model. And if you can't, don't do it. Don't waste your time sucking grant resources until you sort your business model out.
We got this last really nice question from Marlise. Does your organization embrace you to speak frankly, even in your boardrooms?
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason I ended up at my organization. So I was working in the Netherlands, Marlie's home country, kind of doing some really cool stuff. I built a health innovation school for the country, and I loved it there. And then my current CEO recruited me back to Canada to take this role with his 110-year-old home care organization. I would never have come here if we had the culture of not speaking up, because you can't do your job in innovation. I mean, our core guiding principle of my team is to work out loud. And so, everything is open for everybody to see, or else we can't do our jobs. So it's not easy to do in some more stifled organizations. And, you just got to figure out the balance of, am I adding enough value in learning versus getting stifled? And you figure out when that, that doesn't balance out for you.
Thank you so much, Zayna. This has been truly really amazing listening to you. Thank you everyone for the questions. Zayna, we're gonna move on. You please feel free to stay, listen to us, but I know you have to run to another presentation that you're doing. So again, thank you very much.
Bye.
Again.
Great job, you guys.
Bye.
Thank you. All right, can everyone see my screen?
We're good,
Yes.
Ali.
All right, so with that amazing kind of start from Zayna, we're going to be doing this for on every Sprint School call. We'll have this amazing speaker coming in, kind of giving us a different kind of perspective on the issues we were talking about. And so this was the first webinar we're doing on the virtual Sprint School. So we really wanted to get people into the mindset of like, why do we need to start thinking differently? And so this really brings me to, how did we start this? Why did we even start healthcare sprints? And what's the kind of the impetus behind it? And to be honest, a lot of us have project management and QI backgrounds, and what's typical happens in healthcare. We have a project starts, we have tons of meetings, we do extensive environmental scans and research. Somebody picks a solution saying, usually the loudest voice in the room picks a solution up. And then there's a lot of talking and months to build that perfect, evidence-based solution. And then we launch it. It's a pilot, and we hope it works. And we hold our breath, and many times it doesn't work. And why is that? It's because you end up with a solution that never actually considered what the user wanted. And then but the solution looks really beautiful, just like this paved pathway, but this user just wants to get to point A to point B, and we made their life a little miserable. But what will happen in our organizations is we want to create now a buy-in strategy to make people change their pathway. No, you need to get back on the pathway because that's the better evidence-based approach. And so this is plaguing healthcare for decades, and our team is constantly trying to work on this to get them back to human solutions. And so the reality is that it's hitting home every day in healthcare is that, people want us to make more user-centered solutions that actually work for the patients. We know problems are getting more complex, so we cannot be using simple ways of addressing them. And people want fast results. Like Zayna said, we are still years behind in medicine. And we still are, and we are pressured. The world is going at a faster pace, and we need to catch up. And so healthcare sprints really came down to it's a creative problem-solving approach of developing solutions that actually work for people. And we do this all within 2 days. Now, that may be a bold thing when you first hear 2 days, but we'll tell you more about it. But ultimately, what we want to do is instead of spending months and months on an idea or a solution we think is great, we spend 2 days on it, test it with the user, and really see if they like it or not, and get that validation. And then we start moving forward with a much more different momentum. The design, we call it the healthcare sprint, originally called the design sprint because we borrowed it from the design sprint in the tech world. It has a methodology of design thinking behind it. Underneath, it's basically has these phases we go through, and we do that over 2 days. So day one is just about solving the problem, which is we help to understand what the problem is happening. We define what actual problem is. So going from this divergent problem that we have, converging to a specific frame that we take the problem on. And then we start ideating and thinking about what is ways of finding the best solution for this. And we come to a consensus or a decision saying, hey, this is the solution we're going to do. And day two is all about making this simple prototype that we can then test with live users, real users, get their feedback. They might kibosh the idea, or they might say, we love it, do it. And that gives us the confidence to saying, okay, let's carry forward. So this is, you'll see this slide over and over again in all of our virtual talks. We'll be referencing this too. This second slide is just giving you guys a flavor of the agenda for the 2 days that we do. Now, this agenda looks pretty intense, and over the next 6 weeks, we will be breaking it down and going through it step by step. But we just wanted to give you an idea that the 2 days are intense, and they're very structured to help us work through our problem and make people, force them to collaborate and come up with some brilliant ideas coming in. And so when I want to talk about the benefits of healthcare sprints, really our team have been working on sprints for the last 2 years, healthcare sprints. We have done pretty much, at least we have done about 12 sprints so far. And we have seen the benefits just amazing. Number one, that it really reduces the risk of failure. So instead of spending months and years on a concept that might not work, you spend 2 days and you know right away whether it's going to work or not and whether the user is going to love it. The speed, efficiency, and focus really comes from having a very facilitated 2 days that really gets team to work together. And because we have a diverse team and getting people from different kind of backgrounds come in doing the sprint, we really get into kind of what we call is getting the creativity out of it, this diverse team. The recipe, it's all about the recipe, and our goal is to share with you the recipe of this in the next 6 weeks and help you understand it, because anyone can do it in the sense that you can facilitate it. It's not rocket science. It is difficult, I'm not going to lie to you, but it is something that is totally doable in terms of following the steps. And definitely the best thing that happens is when the team comes in together and does this, there's just huge momentum to move forward and keep going and keep going. It doesn't stop. I'm going to pause here.
We had a fantastic comment actually from someone that we know within our organization who's used sprints, and she said it makes everybody feel jazzed and creative, and that's really the feeling that you get when you exit the room. It's, everyone is excited, they want to try something new, and this sprint presents this opportunity for innovation. A lot of the times we go and we talk to teams, they already know how to innovate, or they've got ideas there. The sprint is like a catalyst on how can we get people to blow up those ideas and start actually using them. And we do include patients when we can. There are a lot of the user testing on day 2, and those are some of the things that Ali and I are going to be teaching you guys throughout this 6-week course.
Thanks, Josh. I'm not going to go too much in the history, but basically a little bit, Zayna already touched on it. The design sprint or the healthcare sprint, actually underlying it is the design thinking methodology which came from IDEO. It is a methodology that is time tested. It's been there since the 60s. And it really comes back to this Venn diagram that you also saw in Zayna's slide, which is really about creating solving problems and creating solutions that people love. It makes sense from a business model perspective, and actually we can tangibly and actually do it. And so these three things really underlie the design thinking philosophy. And what happened is with the Google's, when Jake Knapp, who is the author of the design sprint, they took that design thinking methodology and said, why don't we pack it up, all this work, into 5 days? And that's why he published that book a couple of years ago. It's called the Sprint Book. I really encourage you guys to order this on Amazon. Unfortunately, we don't have a discount coupon code, so we just have to pay the full price. But it's on our desk in each of our in our team. This is our go-to book for us.
It's worth it. It's a fantastic read. It reads really, really easy. And like Ali said, we all paid full price for it. And I think some of us have multiple copies. So we encourage you guys to get it and take a read of it.
Okay. And so when Jake Knapp created for 5 days, we actually shortened it into 2 days. And hence we came up to the healthcare sprint. So the question comes in is really, when do you use a healthcare sprint? And we wanted to give people a quick idea what's happening. Number one, if you have a problem that is for the user, it has nothing else to do for your, it's a true problem that the patients or someone who is a client of yours that is facing, definitely that's a problem worth solving. That's the first question you have to ask yourself. The second question is really about, is it worth solving the problem? We take about 6 weeks to prep for those 2 days that come for the healthcare sprint. So it is a little bit of intense effort. So it does require everyone to be invested in. So you have to ask yourself, are you ready to put your, intense effort? Because we're not used to it in healthcare. We're used to just regular meetings once a month, but we really spend a lot of time in prepping for the sprint. The third question you have to ask is, do you already have a solution defined? And so that really means is, if you already have a specific idea in mind that this is what we want, this is where we want to go, I need a form, I need this or best practice implemented, the sprint is not for that. It's really when you're open to possibilities. It's usually a problem which the solution is unknown or ill-defined. That's the perfect one for a sprint to start. And another question that we ask is, is this solution going to really make a difference? And it's going to be a high-stake problem. Because then you can do a sprint and really minimize the risk of failure and just try something and see, does it work actually before we go big, right? The last question we ask is, are you ready to commit 2 days? Because the team we have about, on average, about 10 people in a sprint. And so there's a lot of people there. And so we really ask them that you got to clear your schedules for 2 days, which is a very hard thing to do. So, but we have seen that 5 days is impossible, of course. So we came with the healthcare sprint 2 days. And to be honest with you, we never had a problem with getting people to come to 2 days. It just takes a lot of effort initially to get this all started. Any questions here, folks?
We had one come in the chat box from Marlise that's asking about, Zayna talked about mindset as a key ingredient. So how may we get that? How might we change minds, Ali?
Aha, I know, big question. You have 10 seconds.
No, I think it's a wonderful question, Marlise, because I think ultimately the biggest mindset that we need is, actually there's two mindsets. Number one is being open to try and fail. Number one, being okay with failure and trying something. The other mindset that we need is that we have to get the user involved and get their validation. The user is always going to be driving this. It's a human-centered solution. So if it doesn't work for the user, it's not worth it. So those are two mindsets. Josh, do you have any other mindset that you think would work for this?
No, I think those are two of the really, really important ones. And I think you've identified the mindsets, but Marlise is kind of asking is how do we get them to that space? And it's not easy, but through the sprint process and actually taking them through it, we kind of help shift that mindset. People come into it sometimes with this idea of, fail fast. Of course, we always say fail fast, but then they actually experience it. And it's the experiencing it and seeing the process happen that helps shift people. because I can talk to you about failing fast and that our health organization is encouraging you to try something new. And that's not going to change your mindset. But once you actually experience it and you come into it with an open mind, that's when you start to see people change. Like Linda asked about people coming in, you know, and they felt all jazzed when they left. And they were able to kind of keep that going. And we will be talking a little bit actually about the sprint that she's talking about. So,
can I jump in there and add one thing?
Sure.
This is Lyle from Calgary, everyone. A precursor that I find really effective for people when they're wondering about how to get the mindset, and a lot of design articles and literature will talk about empathy as the first step. If you back it up a step, what you have to have before you have empathy is humility. And so if you really bring humility to the equation and recognize that it's okay not to have the answer, and it's okay not to know, and it's okay to be curious to explore how other people are seeing a problem, seeing potential solutions, that humility brings you to a place of empathy. And people that have humility baked into their muscle memory are more apt to want to embrace failure versus the fear of it. So take a look in the mirror and explore yourself and see where humility is on your muscle scale.
Oh, that's a good one. Wow, ouch.
Love it. And I also want to touch on the piece of curiosity. If you come into a space of curiosity, you'd be open to trying something new and just experiencing it. So, well, thank you so much. That is such an interesting way of looking at it. So appreciate it.
So some of you might be already wondering is like, okay, so what can you say in terms of real world? How did you use a sprint in real world? So I'll give you some examples of that. We've done we have done over 12 sprints since the last 2 years. And one of our first ones was actually doing a sprint in a privacy department where people had challenges with feeling confident about privacy issues that come out, especially in healthcare. And so our team did 2 days with this amazing team. Shout out to Linda French. She's one of the amazing leaders who's already on the call. She made this happen, to be honest with you. And it does, and to give credit to her, it does take amazing, bold leader to, just try a sprint and see how it goes. So in this sprint that we did, the best thing was we came up with 2 amazing solutions literally in 2 days. The user loved it. And one of the solutions was really creating a game card, which helps people ask each other questions and get a better much idea of how to deal with privacy issues. They also create a new workflow to help how to better streamline and make it easy for people to deal with privacy questions as they come in. Another sprint we did, a very popular issue that has come up in healthcare is all about transitions. In this sprint, we looked at how can we transition when patients are going from the hospital to the home, how can we make that process better? Definitely a little complicated sprint. We had nurses, managers, home care teams, patients, administrators, everyone came in together. We ended up creating an advanced discharging kind of process where people will be discharged and we'll be trying to get them to have their discharge planning done faster. And we also did another solution where we were using a better workflow to get them discharged quicker, all in 2 days instead of spending months and months on it. This last one, I will let Josh talk about it because I think it's an incredible sprint he just recently did.
So I did a sprint in the bustling metropolis of Fairview, Alberta. If you're wondering where that is, it's really, really north of me, around 700 kilometers, 480 miles roughly, if my math is any good, around elderly loneliness. And what could we do, not just as a healthcare system, but as well as acting as like that catalyst and pulling together these social groups within communities and dealing with this challenge. And this one I felt was, it's one of those really complex, messy, hairy problems that is becoming, worked along globally. People in NHS, there's people in other parts of Canada, United States who are trying to deal with elderly loneliness and social isolation. So we formed this team and we went up north, and with the wonderful sprint team behind the users who are sitting in the front, we developed a solution for how we may combat elderly loneliness, but not one that is just healthcare. It's also community and not-for-profit driven. So we came up with that solution in only 2 days, and then we tested it with actual people from the community. This is actually going to be a sprint that we highlight and kind of case study throughout this 6-week class. So I don't want to give too much away right now, but as you can already tell by my face, it's something that I'm really passionate about. We had a bunch of really amazing people in the room. Even better, we had people from in the community who said, we love this idea, and we want something like this here where we live. And we are going to be talking about how I went from crazy, hairy, complex problem to a solution that the users actually want in only 2 days throughout this 6 weeks.
And you are such a photogenic smile, Josh. I just have to say that.
I try. It's the bow tie. It's the bow tie. So these are kind of the key takeaways from this last 50 minutes that you've spent with us. Healthcare sprints are here to help solve and test problems with users in 2 days. That's like, honestly, the heart. If I can make a heart, yeah, right there. That's the heart of it. It's fantastic to see the energy that comes not only from people who work within the organization, but also the humans that we're building for, our clients or residents or patients, and see the energy it brings them. Healthcare sprints help you reduce that risk. Ali already talked about it. And instead of spending a year, we spend 2 days. And even if we got the wrong thing, that's okay, because we got the wrong thing in only 2 days. And it's not meant to be perfect. It's just meant to be something that we can show somebody. We call it the MVP, or the most viable product. We just want to show them something and have them interact with it. And then it works well for both big and small problems. You can use it for small problems, but we always encourage those big, hairy, those messy ones. The ones that, there is no exact solution for it, or we're coming into it with a really open mind and we're curious about how can we help our users in a way that's different, but also something that they want.
Yeah, and just to add from Zayna's point, from one of Zayna's slides, I think one thing key is that, and a lot of people have cued on this in the mindset piece, is like, so we can do business as usual, right? We can do our typical QI, incremental improvement that happens in our typical ways of doing, meetings after meetings, spending months and years on it, and not even tested with the person who's going to be using it. And I think healthcare sprints is this package that tells you that, number one, let's actually figure out if this is going to be worth our while. And we have to get into that, being okay with showing something that may be even not complete, but worth seeing for the user to say, this was great. And now I have this ability to say, let's push forward. And the other piece is with having this kind of mindset around curiosity and being open to trying, different things. We really get people to shift and push ourselves, asking each other, like, what if we could do this? What if you can try this? And you know what? By having the user see it and test it the second day, you actually are validating that concept. So, okay. Let's open up the mic. Let's open up the text. You probably have a lot of questions. I'm already seeing a lot of questions in the text box. Josh, you want to take one question?
Sure. There was a question initially at the top from a gentleman by the name of George, and he was wondering about the 6-week preparation. What are the key components of the 6-week prep work that lead up to the 2-day healthcare sprint? What type of info do you need to collect, analyze, and frame beforehand?
This, so George, I love it how you're thinking ahead of this. So this, in our next classes, we'll cover that. And each of our classes, covers different components of how the sprint will work and the different sections of it. Now, originally we would teach healthcare sprints in 1 day, which would be a 6-7 hour day. So we have broken down into 1 hour easy webinars to attend so that we can answer all those questions. So the next webinar is going to be all about prepping and framing the right problem. And then we move on into other webinars where we go into the deeper dive into the sprint.
Yeah, so our next webinar we'll be talking about it, but it's all about ethnography, learning from our user experience, and building personas and that kind of stuff, and what you need to do before you actually start the 2 days. So really appreciate the question. Does anyone want to jump on the mic with one? I don't want to keep hearing my voice. We got one in the text box from Linda French asking, how do we make sure there is follow through after the sprint as teams go back to their busy lives?
Josh, you want to take that one?
I guess I can take that one. Thanks for the question, Linda. So once we get that energy, it's really all about keeping it. And in our team, I've been trying to push teams, and you will already know this, to kind of move to a new Scrum methodology and changing the way that they work. So they go from these teams where they have this really awesome sprint and then they fall right back into bureaucracy. We try to pull them in and say, okay, you've worked iteratively and quickly in 2 days. We want you to keep that mindset going. So we teach people Agile or Scrum project management to kind of help keep the momentum and that energy. Any more?
Hi, it's Kareem here.
Hello, Kareem.
Sorry, I'm joining in the office with my colleague, so there's some echo there. I have a question which I think will be much easier to type. Than typing. Some communities, like the Indigenous community.
Oh,
sorry.
I think we're getting a lot of feedback from your mic, Kareem.
Hopefully that should be better now. When there are some communities like the Indigenous community where time is a big thing. Like you have to take time to get to know the community or work with them. So we're talking about doing things fast to create disruption, create change, which is so good. But have you ever come across working in a community like that where you need to develop a relationship or think differently, and how a sprint school might work with a community like that, where telling stories and taking time is of the essence?
Can I jump on this?
You got it.
So I work with Indigenous patients and citizens, actually. And so one of the things that the sprint does is, number one is usually, depending on what kind of project you're working on, if it's a brand new project, there's a little bit more upfront work. But let's say you already have some relationship with Indigenous communities. One thing that we have seen is more and more we consult with Indigenous folks. They actually want to see more action, and they're tired of talking. And one thing that, in my experience, that has come quite forward, when we have brought them into the testing phase, that's where they really are able to give us much more concrete feedback and give us an opportunity to say, okay, are we on the right track or not? That's one of the things that the sprint does, is that instead of just seeking input, we actually seek input through a way of showing them a show and tell, saying, are we on the right track or not? And by so with an Indigenous person, I may allocate a longer time to have an interview with them to test my solution with them, to get their feedback on it, to respect their timing. But what I've seen is it actually has a much more better conversation if I can just show them something that actually works, and where they can give me more constructive feedback saying, is this the right thing that we're working on? Will this work for you? If not, what would you want to change about it? And that's one of the magics of the user testing piece, that it's no longer conceptual or theoretical. It's something tangible that you can show to the user and say, hey, this is what we made. It may be scrappy, but is this something that you like and can live with? I hope that helps, Kareem.
He said thanks.
Okay.
Ali, I'm also wondering, it really depends on where you're at with that community. So if you haven't done the storytelling and the understanding phase, then absolutely 2-day sprint would be absurd and offensive. So I think it's in the larger context.
Yeah, so one of the things we'll talk about in our next meeting is the user research that comes as part of the sprint prep. And so in that user research piece, that's where the empathy building piece comes in. And if we are really far off on this stage where you don't have a lot of understanding from the user issues, or you haven't built that relationship with them, of course, then the sprint have to be delayed until you build that kind of relationship. So thank you for bringing that up, Marlies, as well. Okay. Josh?
So this is our workbook. And I know it's almost 9 o'clock, so I'm going to go through it really quick. This is page 1. This is the first thing we're going to get you guys to do. And this is the first step to the kind of the working out loud and the part of the virtual sprint school that we're really excited about. On the first page, it's all about just finding a problem. So we threw a tip in there. It can be from your work or your personal life, but really if it's around personal life, it'll be hard for me and Ali to comment on it when you tweet it. So put your problem down on this page, take a picture of it, and then throw it up on Twitter. And if you tag us at the Design Lab and using hashtag Sprint School, Ali and I can help you guys go through it a little bit. As well as this is our starting point. This is where teams come to us, the first step of a sprint, and we think we have a problem. And we're going to be kind of taking you guys through this journey. And I know some of you may be worrying, it's like, oh no, is my problem good enough? Or is this the right problem to be sprinting on? That's perfect. If you have those questions, tweet it out, because Ali and I are going to help you guys walk through it. Nobody has ever come to us with a perfect problem. The one that we're like, yeah, that's bang on, and we're going to work on that. So this is all about iterating, trying something new, and that curiosity piece that we've already talked about. We had a couple examples up here on the board. Please don't use any of those ones. We've already taken those. But they're both examples of something that could be from healthcare or something that can be personal. Ali? Next slide for me. He seems to have frozen. All right, that's okay, because we are on our last slide. Where we're talking about our next session. So our next session is going to be held next week. It is going to be at a different time. So we're going to be doing 10 a.m. Mountain, and we're going to do, I think it's 4 p.m. GMT. Our next guest speaker is going to be Ariel Sim. She's coming to us from the Mars Solution Lab, and she's going to be talking about the importance of interacting with your user and learning from your user's experience. So we really are looking forward to you guys joining us and hearing from her talk. She's fantastic as well. She has some videos on YouTube if you want to watch her. She's such a great speaker, so I'm really looking forward to her coming and joining us. Like I said, you guys have questions, anything that you want to learn from us, hit us up on Twitter. Make sure to use hashtag Sprint School. We watch our social media. We love working out loud, and we look forward to interacting with you guys over the next 5 weeks. So we're going to have a lot of fun. Looking forward to seeing you next week. That's it for me. My teammate's mic has died. I will see you guys all next week.
Sounded like the Tour de France at the end there. I love it. All right. I'll chat with you offline.
Okay.